What's up, guys? Today we are back with another video. Today we have a Samsung S22 Ultra. We are going to be repairing the back glass as well as the front screen today. I'm going to go ahead and get this on the heat pad and get right into it. All right, now that we've had it sitting for around 10 to 15 minutes, I'm going to go ahead and use some alcohol to help break up the adhesive even more and just run my pry tool along the edges of this frame. The back glass should pry right up with no struggle at all. If it doesn't, I suggest putting it back on the heat pad and letting it sit for a little bit longer. Now, I'm going to use a Phillips head screwdriver to take out all of the screws in this phone. Luckily for us, Samsung does use all Phillips head screws. You saw me there switch my screwdriver. My screwdriver was going dull. I didn't want to strip any screws. So I'm just taking out all the screws. The next thing you'll see me do is lift up on the wireless charging pad. That way I can expose all of the other flex cables. And the first thing I do is disconnect the battery, then disconnect all of the other flex cables. You always want to disconnect the battery first. The next thing I'm going to do is take out all of the plastics at the top and lift up the motherboard. So you'll see me doing that here. I just use a plastic pry tool to pry up. That way I don't damage any connectors. The next thing I'm going to do is take out that wireless charging pad as well as the loudspeaker from the bottom. Take out the three screws that hold in the charging port as well as the SIM tray. Then the charging port lifts right up. The next thing I'm going to do is take out the 5G antennas. As you can see, there's the one on the left and then there's also one on the right. And hey, that's me. That's half of my head. And the last thing I do is take out the battery. I use a soft-edged pry tool that's really strong. It has never given me any problems and I've never punctured a battery with it. So if you don't have one laying around, I would suggest just using a pry tool and taking your time with it. But for me, using that pry tool always gets it on pretty easily. As you will see, I do forget the loudspeaker here for just a second, but I do get it right in almost instantly once I realize. So don't think I forgot that. You'll see here in just a second. I start from the bottom going up. So I put in the charging port. I'm going to put in the 3 screws that go there. I also put in the LCD flex, and now I am putting in the loudspeaker. Once I get that loudspeaker in and screwed in, I'm going to go ahead and finish putting back together the rest of the phone. I decide to put the motherboard in. Make sure I don't put any... Be careful with Samsungs because a lot of the times I see a lot of people put motherboards in and forget connectors under, and then they have to take it all back apart. So just make sure that there's no connectors under because there is a bunch of connectors that people miss. Other than that, you just put the plastics back together. I don't connect any of the flex cables until I have the battery in, and I always put the battery in last. Okay, so that's another thing you should look out for. I use some double-sided tape for this to hold in the battery. I was out of my white non-static tape, but this double-sided tape works perfectly fine as well. I also didn't remove any on the battery just to maintain the non-static environment. So I'm going to go ahead and put all the plastics back together, screw in the Phillips screws, and then once I get that done, I will begin putting on the back glass. As you can see, I plugged in the battery last and then finished putting together all the screws. All right, so what I'm going to do now is work on the back glass. I'm going to grab my B7000 adhesive and run a thin line around the edges of the frame. I'm going to make sure I don't leave any empty spots and make sure I cover all spots with this B7000. This B7000 says it's good for water resistance, but I don't trust it, so I don't guarantee water resistance after any repair, but I do advise that it could be water resistant. Now, after I've run my thin bead around the entire frame, I'm going to go ahead and grab the back glass and push it in to clean off all of any extras that comes out the edges. Once I do that, I did forget to record me clamping down the phone, but you will see here that I edited it to where right where it's clamped down. I clamp it down. I leave it for about an hour. I'm going to unclamp everything and test the phone, make sure everything is sitting properly, and make sure the screen is good. The screen was tested before we did any type of repairs beforehand, but just to show that everything is okay, you could see my reflection there in the screen. But, yep.